Hello and welcome back for another Torah Tuesday. Today we finish the sign of darkness in Exodus chapter 10, picking things up in verse 24. Last week we started with the first 3 verses of this sign, so if you haven't watched that yet, you'll want to go back and pick those up before this week's video. I'm going to read from my translation from the Hebrew, and then I'll make some comments about the significance of these verses. So Pharaoh called to Moses and said, "Go serve Yahweh. Leave only your flocks and herds. Even your dependents may go with you." But Moses said, "You yourself must also give into our hand sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may make to Yahweh our God. So even our livestock will go with us. No hoof will be left behind, for from our belongings we will take to serve Yahweh our God. But we ourselves will not know how we must serve Yahweh until we arrive there." But Yahweh strengthened Pharaoh's heart, and he was not willing to send them away. Pharaoh said to him, "Go away from me. Watch yourself that you not see my face again, for on the day you see my face, you will die." Moses said, "You have spoken it. I will never again see your face." You might notice that the scene doesn't seem to end. Moses answers that he's not going to see his face again, but he doesn't actually leave. And that's our clue that what happens here is then paused while we get some backstory beginning in chapter 11, verse 1. So the death of the firstborn is actually enveloped in the plague of darkness. The darkness does not dissolve before the death of the firstborn happens. In fact, the darkness does not dissipate until they have crossed the Sea of Reeds in chapter 14. This is not to say that the sun didn't rise again in the intervening time. I think it did. But from the narrator's perspective, the narrator does not talk about the light of the sun again until the Israelites are safely through the sea, which I think is theologically significant. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So we're in chapter 10, verses 24 through 29 of Exodus. And it begins with a surprising concession on Pharaoh's part. He says, "Go serve Yahweh," which is exactly what we've been waiting for. He seems clear that Yahweh is demanding their service, and so he says, "Go." So we've been waiting for the word "go" since the beginning. Moses has been requesting, "Let my people go," or "Send my people away." Pharaoh finally is willing to send them. However, my parents warned me when I was growing up that if anything seems too good to be true, then it probably is. And that's true in this case. Pharaoh telling them to go isn't the full story. He makes it sound good, but then he gives an exception or a boundary. He says, "You and your dependents may go." And by dependents, this is referring to women and children. Previously, Pharaoh has said, "Well, only the men can go." So this time he's trying to look like Mr. Nice Guy and say that he's going to let the dependents go as well. But he's saying the flocks and herds have to stay behind. Now, man, if you or I were in a situation in which we were enslaved and we had a chance to get out only if we left behind our possessions, I think we would agree to just leave without our possessions. But Moses recognizes that this isn't just about getting free. This is about serving Yahweh, and they can't go without their flocks and herds because those flocks and herds belong to Yahweh. They need to make everything they own available to Yahweh's disposal. So I have questions about this text. Pharaoh saying that the flocks and herds must stay behind seems suspicious to me in light of the fact that his herds, his animals have died in the previous signs. There was the actual plague on livestock. The time we actually hear the word plague, there was a plague on livestock. Then the hail killed whatever livestock were left, whatever animals had been acquired since then when they were out in the field. And so Pharaoh's own supply of animals must have been incredibly decimated. So permission to leave without their animals sounds very suspicious to me, like Pharaoh's just about to seize everything that belongs to them while they're away and they can't defend themselves. But Yahweh's plan has always been to deliver not just the people but their animals from this exploitative ruler in Egypt. Now, it might seem at first glance like this is God's upholding of animal rights, that the animals have a right to be free. It's not quite that, because many of the animals here are going to be offered as sacrifices to Yahweh. They will actually die. The point of this text is that animals devoted to the service of Pharaoh are going to be liberated for the service to Yahweh. They belong to Yahweh. They can't be left behind. Besides, the people are not going to be returning to Egypt. They will be leaving permanently, and so they need to bring all of their belongings with them. But by bringing all their flocks and herds, not just a few animals that they might want to offer to God, we see that God requires that we not hold anything back for ourselves. You can imagine if they just brought a couple of animals and left the rest back behind, that they would have the mindset that we're returning home to our belongings. We're going to give God these few things. But God is asking them to come out into the wilderness for a festival and to bring everything with them, because everything they have belongs to Yahweh. He could ask for any of it or all of it, and it would be within his rights to do so. So the past 3 signs have given us incrementally a vision of Israelite worship that has helped us clarify what's going to be the nature of Israelite worship of Yahweh. First, we learned that the location matters. In 821, Pharaoh had tried to say, well, you could just do your festival right here. You could sacrifice to Yahweh right here in the land. And Moses says, we can't. Yahweh called us to go out. So Yahweh gets to decide where this happens. In chapter 10, verse 11, we find out that the entire family is invited to participate. The worship of Yahweh is not something that's only for men. It's for the entire family. And here we find out that Yahweh is the one who gets to set the requirements for worship. This is not a choose your own adventure or I'm going to decide what I want to give to God. The people have to be ready to meet Yahweh's demands and give him everything he asks for. We have the sense at this part in the story that the showdown is coming to a climax. Pharaoh has just said, the next time you see my face, you will die. This is the last audience Moses has with Pharaoh before they leave. There's an exchange of messages later where Pharaoh tries to summon Moses and Aaron, but Moses and Aaron do not seek him out from here on out. So we're coming to the end of the showdown in Egypt. And what a showdown it is. I hope that it's been interesting to you to slow down and see the details. Next week, we'll pick it up in chapter 11, verse 1, which is the death of the firstborn. And we'll see that it is connected in with this sign of darkness, that the two are not entirely separate, which is why they occupy the same spot in the third cycle of signs, that last position in the last column of the cycles of signs. So I'll see you next week. In the meantime, if you know someone who you think would enjoy a deep dive into Exodus, tell them about Torah Tuesday, and go ahead and hit the little thumbs up button down below if you've been enjoying these videos. Thanks. Have a great week.